Hey there, everybody. I'm Fionuala. I live, work, and garden in Zone 9B. It is the middle of spring and the roses are looking amazing. So I decided today's video really needs to be all about mid-spring care for roses because they do need some care. We've had some crazy weather. We had early heat, we had rain, all kinds of things. So massive amount of blooms already. And right now, it's actually time to do a whole lot of deadheading, a whole lot of inspection for fungal problems, for insect problems. So let's dive right in and I'll show you what to look for and what you need to do for your roses right now mid-spring. There are all kinds of roses. There's tree roses, bush roses, climbing roses, but pretty much everything I tell you today is going to work for all of them. Your mini roses, your ground cover roses, you do want to check every single one of them because they're going to need care right now. With the weather that we had, I mean, it's been crazy. We had a big blast of heat early in March, and then we had some cold. We even had some hail. We had a lot of rain. So your garden's going to look a little bit different this year than it did last year or the year before. So you want to stay up on it. I'll show you what to look for. I'll show you what to do about it if you do find a problem. And I'll show you how to enjoy your beautiful roses. So this beautiful rose right here has been through some weather and it's time to deadhead it. We're at the end of April and there are various chores you need to be doing for your roses. Especially this year. We had this great early sort of a spring blast of heat a few weeks back. Then the weather switched again and it got hailing and rainy and stormy. Lots and lots of rain, which means for roses, prime fungal opportunities. So the kind of weather we've had is really encouraging for any kind of fungus disease. And as you know, roses can get rust, they can get black spot, they can get mildews of various kinds. So I'm really looking for that as I deadhead the rose. What I have noticed is that the rose blooms got absolutely saturated during the weather and they're just not looking good, but they don't look actually diseased or anything. So I'm just basically deadheading. Now, if you've never deadheaded a rose before, what you do, well, I won't deadhead that bit because there's some beautiful buds up there, but you deadhead it back to the first or the second set of 5 leaflets on a leaf. And you want to have it, the little bud that's in the elbow of that leaflet, you want it to be facing outward because you are shaping your rose with your deadheading and even your harvesting of blooms. You're shaping that rose so that it is going, the next branch is going outwards rather than inwards, because you want to keep the circulation really open and airy in there because that too helps with any fungal problems that might become an issue. All those fungal diseases we absolutely hate, they thrive in moist environments and lack of air circulation. And so you're really trying your best to make sure every rose bush you have has great air circulation, that the growth is going the right direction, not in, and that you're going to get as many roses as possible from your rose bush. Now this one here is Pope John Paul II, the second, which is a fabulous white rose. Not looking so fabulous right this second because, like I said, the rain soaked those blooms. So I'm deadheading in, encouraging the new blooms and new buds and new growth to come up in the right direction. And next thing you know, it's going to be blooming all over again. The other thing you do in April for your rose bushes is you're going to feed them. Now we're at the very end of April right now. And like I said, this first flush of blooms is kind of exceptional this year. We've had an odd year with early heat. So you may well be doing this kind of thing in the middle of May, even here in Zone 9B. And what you want to feed them with right now after the first flush of blooms is you want to give them a bloom food. You can see on this particular rose, and hopefully the roses in your garden too, that the foliage is looking great, that it's nice and deep green and just as healthy as can be. And what we're looking for next is the potassium and the phosphorus that is going to really promote more blooms next time. So what you want to do, eat it with a really good dose of bloom food. A 0-10-10 or a 2-10-10 or something that's real low on that first number, which is nitrogen, and higher in the second two. That's what your roses really are going to love right this minute. While you're pruning and while you're checking them, check out the leaves and see if there's any insect damage. Earwigs are just beginning to come into force. Slugs and snails, of course, are absolutely loving this weather. If there's any branches going the wrong direction, right now is when you're going to be cutting them off. So I'm taking off anything that's growing low. And anything that has promise gets to stay. Anything that's got a bud on it, it's going to give me some blooms. That gets to stay also. Then, of course, I am going to clean up really well afterwards. Just in case there's any fungal spores that I just didn't spot with my eyes, you want to really clean up underneath the plant. So you don't want any fungal spores lingering around down there that might bounce back up onto the foliage and infect your rose going forward. This guy is super bushy in the interior. We did a really good prune on it in the winter when it was dormant, but I'm noticing right now that some of the new growth is going inward. I'm just gonna take away something on the inside to ensure excellent air circulation. I'm liking how it's looking. Ow! And yes, of course, I should have rose gloves on, but I don't. There we go. The shape looks much better, I think. I'm debating whether to cut this one off too. Just a little bit further back, and then I'm happy. Now this here is a tree rose. Tree roses are roses that have been grafted on a stalk. And something I wanted to show you, right at the base of this stalk is growth coming up from the rootstock below. Now tree rose, the varietal you actually want is grafted onto the top of a 36-inch stem or a 24-inch stem or sometimes a 48-inch stem. I never carry those here at Cottage Gardens. I love the 36-inch. It's just perfect. Gets the rose growth right up at the height you want it. But something you have to watch out for when you're caring for your tree rose or any kind of grafted rose is watch for growth that is coming up from underground, because that is growth from the rootstock. That is not going to give you the rose that you're looking for. This is not going to be Pope John Paul II. This is going to be some really sturdy, strong rose that they use as a grafting stock. So yeah, this comes out. What you do here, you cut it back underneath the soil level, if at all possible. I am really taking it out. Now that I know this rose even does this, I'll be keeping extra sharp eyes on it going forward. You also weed out anything that's down there. Use it as an opportunity. Weed it out. Clear away any mulch that might have built up over the roots, because if the soil level gets too high over the roots, that really, really encourages the rootstock to start sending up shoots. Okay, got that one done. There's another one over there. I'll get that cleaned up in a second. But I'm really happy with the way this looks right now. I'll probably walk back and forth, spot a couple of extra little bits that I might need to do some pruning with. Then I'm going to feed it, then I'm going to water it, then I'm going to rearrange the mulch around it a little bit, maybe add a little extra. And then I think this rose over here is inspiring me to make a bouquet. All right, rose care, another thing. Well, not really another thing. Following along, you're looking for fungus. Here we are, spring, right smack in the middle of spring. This is when you're really looking for slugs, snails, earwigs on your roses, but also the dreaded rose slug. And unfortunately, Deadheading, John Paul II over here, my second one, I found evidence of rose slug. This is just horrendous. It's normal, middle of spring, this really is kind of what happens, but you got to be beady-eyed about it because these guys are voracious. They don't actually kill your rose, but they make it unsightly. They make the foliage unsightly and they stress your rose so that your rose is stressed and is not going to give you the blooms that you want, the growth that you want, the health that you want. You also want to nip the life cycle of this little critter in the bud. So here's what they look like. Here's what the damage looks like. You're looking at your rose leaf and it looks like somebody has scraped off a layer. Off the top or off the bottom, or a little bit of both. So you're seeing this weird, this healthy green, and then this. Somebody has literally scraped off a layer of cells off the top of it. This is when you start looking for the culprit. This is what rose slug damage looks like. Now let me back up a tiny bit. A rose slug is not actually a slug, and it's actually a sawfly. It's a little fly, so seeing the little fly isn't really going to do you any good because it looks just like any old little fly. But the actual rose slug larva, this is what it looks like. It is tiny, disguises itself as a tiny little worm that's pretty much the same color as the rose leaf, but there it is, right there. Now, luckily, there's a number of remedies. So I've seen the damage, and this, I tell you, is brand new damage. This is probably 2 or 3 rose slugs on this rose bush. I can imagine the sawfly laid an egg last week or two. Last week it laid an egg or two, I should say. A few of them hatched out, and this is very early stage damage, which is great. Now I know it's early stage. Now I know it's here. Now I know I can treat it. This makes it extra important that you get rid of all your debris, just in case you are also allowing any more of those little eggs to hatch. So, a couple of ways of treating these creatures. I am just going to squish this one because squishing will absolutely eliminate this guy, stop all of his chewing, all of his rose damage. He is now squished, but to prevent future rose slugs just having their way with this rose bush, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go grab my favorite rose slug product. All right, here is the cure. Now, I'm not affiliated, I'm not being sponsored by them, but this is the product I use at my own house anytime there's trouble, and obviously this is the product I'm going to use here at Cottage, and this is what I highly recommend. It's called Captain Jack's Dead Bug Brew. And the secret ingredient is spinosad, and it works really, really well on rose slug. Thank God. Like I said before, rose slug doesn't kill your rose, but it just stresses the heck out of it. And who wants a stressed out rose? But the other thing is, when you're walking in your garden, you don't want to be seeing a billion chores that you're going to need to be doing. What you want to see is healthy foliage, healthy flowers. You do not want to see, ooh, I think I just found a little egg cluster. Ha! I am 99% sure that is an egg cluster of the sawfly. But if it's not of the sawfly and the rose slug, it's some other thing that I don't particularly want on my rose bush. So it's going. But if you want to get there even ahead, of the little sawfly larvae hatching out and starting to eat the foliage of your rose, inspect the top and the bottom of every single leaf on your rose bush. Like I said, I am almost grateful for this first little infestation. There was none last week. Found the first one, and now this is a prompt for me to go out there, spray all of my roses here at Cottage. We're talking about the in-ground ones. I know for a fact that my for sale ones are totally unaffected. We do a daily inspection on those guys, but a weekly inspection on the in-ground ones. We are going to nip this in the bud. There's going to be no more rose slugs in this garden at all. So you want to spray the upper portion of each leaf and the lower portion too. And what it does is the minute the little rose slug takes a bite of this spinosad, it perishes. And your infestation is really halted. But what you want to do, just in case there's any more of those sawflies out there laying eggs, you want to still stay up in the inspection of your rose bush. If you see any further infestations, you're going to spray again. For safety's sake, in my own garden, because they are a thing in my own garden at home, I spray every 2 weeks for probably the whole month of May into the middle of June, and that really takes care of it. Some roses have resistance to rose slug, which is absolutely a fantastic thing. You'll find that the ones that have a much glossier, deeper green, more leathery type of foliage, the rose slugs don't make inroads on them, so that saves you some time and energy in the garden. So what else do you do in your garden for roses right now in kind of middle of spring? You want to be watching for disease, deadheading beautifully, making bouquets, and feeding your roses with the bloom food, and just caring for them, nipping any disease problems, any insect infestations in the bud. Oh, if you're noticing aphids in your garden, let go some ladybugs. They are going to be thrilled to bits. If the ladybugs are unavailable in your area, you know you can always just spray those aphids right off with a jet of water or make some homemade soap remedy for it too. Other than that, it's just enjoy the beauty of the blooms in your garden. Most of the time there's no problems, but just like any living space, sometimes a pest pops by, sometimes a disease pops in. You know how to take care of it. Do not let that be the major focus. Let the catching of the, do not let that be your major focus. How about harvesting blooms for bouquets? That should be the focus of your rose garden right this second. Enjoying the beauty, enjoying the birds that are visiting, the butterflies that stop by, and how much nature is so in charge this time of year. So picking bouquets, that's a really, really important thing to do in the middle of spring in your rose garden. Bring this beauty indoors. And while you're picking your bouquet, you may as well make sure that you're harvesting blooms and kind of doing that deadheading at the same time. You can pick beautiful little cluster blooms and clean it up at the same time, but also harvest it, prune to an outward facing leaflet so that any future growth is going to go that way, outwards. So you're kind of doing double duty here, picking some gorgeous blooms to bring indoors and caring for your rose and ensuring an excellent future for it. Isn't that pretty? So what are you going to feed your roses with? Again, no affiliation, nothing like that, but Maxi Bloom is a really fabulous thing to feed your roses right now after you've deadheaded them and after they've been through that first flush of bloom. Super simple to use too. 1 tablespoon of this per gallon of water, watering your roses. The other thing I love, just because I love giving people choices, especially gearing towards organic, this fabulous Ultra Bloom plant food, which is 0-10-10 low on nitrogen, like zero nitrogen. Higher on the other two, the phosphorus and the potassium, is exactly what your roses need right now to push out a whole other flush of blooms for you. This one is super easy, granular. I've showed you before how to feed your roses. Dibble 5 holes around the drip line of your roses. Pour in some of this fabulous food. Cover it up again with dirt, water it in. Super, super simple. So there you go. Rose care in the middle of spring could not be easier. And it's incredibly rewarding. So get on outside, have a look at your rose bushes, inspect everything, see that everything's going the right direction, doing what you want. Get that little bit of deadheading, get the pruning, do that disease inspection, do the feeding. Make sure you pick yourself a bouquet because the roses are amazing right now. They're absolutely incredible. You need to bring some indoors. So thank you so much for watching today. Hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope it was really helpful. Don't forget to find me on Facebook and Instagram and at Cottage Gardens of Petaluma. This is where I am more often than not. Being passionate about roses and peonies and all the other wonderful things that we can grow here in Zone 9B, fabulous Northern California. Be sure to drop me a comment too. What's going on in your rose garden right now? I would love to hear about it. All right, everybody, have a wonderful time till next time I see you. Happy gardening.